wrapping up a series called Family Matters. Over the last several weeks, we've been having conversations about parenting. We've been having conversations about marriage. And we're going to wrap that up today. We had a marriage retreat this weekend that was phenomenal. A lot of you were there. We have baptisms going on. People are back in school. Lots of things happening in families. And I just want to say, if you're here and you say, well, maybe I'm not a parent. Maybe I'm not married. You know, most of what we're talking about is relationship stuff, right? And so you can take what we talk about today with parenting preteens and teens, and you can apply that to your friends, you can apply that to your coworkers, you can apply that to your relationships with your neighbors and other important people in your life. If you're grandparents, you can apply that, right? This is just about people and loving people well, interacting, treating people as God is calling us to. And I just get the privilege of doing that in the context of preteens and teens, is what Tony asked me to do, because that season of life is just really easy, right? So we'll be done here in about... It'll take about 10 minutes. We'll be done. You'll know everything you need to know. You know, parenting for me has been one of the most joy-filled and fulfilling things in my life. And at times, it's also one of the most gut-wrenching and hard and difficult things I've ever done. And in many ways, I feel very inadequate every time I speak about parenting, because I feel like there's a whole lot more I don't know than what I do know. And so today what I share, I just share with humility in that I'm very much still a work in progress. And one of the things I've learned about parenting is right when you think you figured something out, your kids change, you change, the world changes. And what used to work before doesn't work anymore, right? So this week has been a microcosm in my mind of parenting. So last weekend, I took my kids my two girls to dad camp. It was our second year of doing it. Phenomenal weekend for me. It's one of the highlights of the year of being able to just spend intentional time with my kids, connected. There was like 90 other dads there that just, how do we do this centered on Christ? How do we go from being good dads to great dads? And it was just a phenomenal, top of the mountaintop, like great experience. I'm taking my son next month. Just phenomenal, right? And then this week, one of my kids had a really rough day, and one of my kids, we've had some really difficult, challenging conversations, and it's just been very, very hard, right? And in 1 week, I was just reminded of going from when things are fulfilling and great to when things are really challenging and hard. And my clicker doesn't seem to be working, so we're gonna not do the clicker because it's not working. But anyway, so that was just, it was just a picture of what that looks like, right? And I just want to encourage you as parents, whether you're in a place right now and you're like, I love parenting and it's been really great and I just got this thing figured out and things are going well, or if you're in the place of where it's really hard, that's okay, right? That's the journey of what it is to be a parent. Let me just ask a couple questions for you to reflect on as kind of do a heart check. Now, don't raise your hand, don't speak out loud, right? You don't have to say that, but this is just more of a heart check of where you are right now. For you right now, is parenting more of something that brings joy or frustration? Sure, yeah. Well, sometimes it changes by the hour, right? Right? Let me ask this. Do you as a parent get more fulfillment out of being a parent, or maybe out of the work you do outside of the household? Just be honest with yourself. Are you in a place right now where you're just waiting for your kids to get through this season? Or maybe you're just waiting for your kids to become adults, and you can be done, right? So you can move on. Now, don't say anything, right? I said don't say anything. Because I know, I've talked to a lot of you, I've been there, I see your posts on social media, right? Like some of you are in a really challenging season right now with your kiddos, and it's really hard. I thought maybe some of you might be able to relate with a few of these posts. This one says, my daughter is 17, almost 18. We've been getting into fights lately, and they're really bad. I'm over it. I'm done. I just don't want to be a mom anymore. I'm done with my stepson. He's 15. He'll be 16 in October, and he's lazy AF. I don't know what AF means, but he sleeps all day. He refuses to clean his room after himself, won't cook for himself. He's failed his classes. Long venting post alert. Can't afford another therapy bill, so please don't judge. These are real posts. I'm done with this parenting thing. I'm packing a bag and running far away. I've been through these teenage years before with my oldest boy, and I thought those times were horrible. Maybe you can relate with that, right? We've all been there. There's times like that. And I just want to say it's okay if you're there now, because God has something for you, and it won't always be that way. See, one of the challenges with parenting that I've realized is the goal of parenting is to raise adults that are self-sufficient, that can stand in the world, that when they leave can stand up, right? That are ready and prepared for what God has for them as adults. But the challenge is, and now this is a very unscientific graph that I put together, the challenge is the dependency, your child's dependency on you decreases very rapidly. I mean, after they're out of that baby stage, right when they get a voice, right when they get mobile, they no longer want you as much. They no longer need you as much. Right? When they're a baby, they need you for everything. They need you to clothe them. They need you when they go to the bathroom. They need you to feed them, bathe them, put them to bed. But then as they start learning how to exert their will and having a voice and having opinions, right, that decreases. And they just don't need you as much. And then you get to the preteen years and it starts decreasing really rapidly as they become even more independent. And the challenge is our expectation as parents, our expectation is that red line. And if you're not a parent yet, or if you're a new parent, your thought is, you know what, for 18 years, I'm going to be there for my child. I'm going to give them everything they need. I'm going to be fully engaged. And then at 18, they're going to go off and I'll be done. But for those 18 years, I'm 100%. And there's this gap between, I think, sometimes what we expect as parents or what we want as parents and really what our kids are wanting or needing or thinking they need from us. Now, some of you that are parents of adult kids, you're like, that drop-off never happens, right? Like, they're still, I feel like I'm still parenting them, and they're 28. But there's this gap, and there's this disconnect, and it creates tension sometimes, and it creates conflict sometimes, and it creates frustration sometimes, and how do we navigate that? And what you saw in those posts, for a lot of parents, when there's this tension and there's this gap and this frustration, and sometimes we feel helpless, what we end up doing is we just start to disengage ourselves. That orange line is just us as parents, and I was thinking more about this, and it probably should even be lower and maybe even quicker, that some of us as parents, we've just disengaged, if we're honest. Now, maybe not fully. Think about it. If there was a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being I'm a fully engaged, 100% on, doing everything I can for my kids, parent, that's a 10. A 0 is just a fully engaged, I'm totally hands off. Just think about what score would you give yourself? Some of you, you're probably in the middle somewhere there. But the reality is some of us are disengaged. All of us are probably disengaged to some degree, and there's opportunity for improvement. And some of it's not because it's intentional. Some of it's because we just don't know and we're confused. And like what we thought used to work doesn't work anymore. And this is something I know Tony talks about. But what our kids need from us changes at each season in life, right? When they're young and they're a baby, I put supervisor up there. But really it should be like dictator, right? Like you are fully like you control everything. They don't leave your sight. Everything they do it because you allow them to. And that's what they need. But then quickly they start growing. And especially when they go off to elementary school, and now they're actually away from you more than they're with you, right? They don't need a supervisor or a dictator in their life. What they need then is they need a guide. Someone that will set boundaries, and someone that will shepherd them, and someone that will come alongside them and help them navigate the world that they're stepping into. But then as your kids get older and start entering the preteen and teen years, they become more independent, and they start having more opinions, and they start having other influences in their life. And now you're even less of a guide, and you're more of an influencer. And then as your kids become adults, and I've seen a lot of you navigate this well, where you're really good friends with your adult children. And see, the problem is there's some parents of 8-year-olds that are trying to be a best friend to their 8-year-old. Your 8-year-old doesn't need a best friend. They need a guide. And there's some of you with teenagers that are trying to be a supervisor and control your teenager. That's not going to work, right? And so this is the challenge of parenting. And the question I want to ask today is, wherever you're at on that spectrum of 0 to 10 of engagement, what does it look like to take another step forward? Whether you're a 5, what does it look like to get to a 7? If you're a 2, what does it look like to get to a 3 or a 4? If you're a 9 and you're really good at this, what does it look like to get even better at it? What would happen if Vineyard Life Church was a church known that, you know what, we don't do passive parenting? There's not passive parents here. We are fully engaged. We are fully engaged as parents. We are fully engaged with our ministry leaders and our kids' church, which is phenomenal, and just investing into parents and investing into our young people. For those of you that are maybe grandparents now or further along, we are fully engaged in helping younger parents or pouring into the kids or the young people that come to this church, because I'm serving on the weekends and I'm getting that opportunity, even though I may not have my own kids in this season. What does it look like to go from passive parenting to being fully engaged. So I want to share 3 things with you. Some of these things are conversations I actually had at dad camp last week, and a lot of these things I'm still are in process. This is going to be super practical, though. Jeremiah and Mandy 2 weeks ago did a phenomenal job of talking about what does discipleship look like in the home, and so some of this is building off of them. But I just want to be super practical and just give you 3 ideas, three areas that I'm growing in and learning in as I challenge myself to be a fully engaged parent. The first one is this: is exploration. Exploration. Psalm 139 says this. It says, "Oh yes, you shaped me first inside, then out. You formed me in my mother's womb. I thank you, high God, you're breathtaking. Body and soul, I am marvelously made. I worship in adoration. What a creation. You know me inside and out, and you know every bone in my body. You know exactly how I was made, bit by bit, how I was sculpted from nothing into something, like an open book. You watched me grow from conception to birth. All of the stages, all of the days of my life were spread out before you. The days of my life all prepared before I'd even lived one day." Now, we use this verse and we talk about how God knows you. Right? This God isn't distant. Those people that were baptized this morning, what they've realized is that we have a real God that wants to be involved in their life, and it's a real relationship. This isn't just something you learn about on Sundays or your mom and dad taught you. This is real, and God knows you so incredibly well. From the moment you were conceived, God was involved in shaping you and sculpting you, and your personality and the skills and the gifts that you have today are because God put them there. And as an adult, he is still just as involved in your life right now, and he wants to be as involved in your life, and he knows everything about you. He knows what you're thinking. He knows the struggles and the challenges you have. He knows the potential and the destiny that's on your life, and he knows the purpose he's given to you and the reason he's put you in the workplace, in the neighborhood, in the community that you're in. God is so incredibly involved, and that is incredibly good news, that we have a God that's not distant, but is so desirous and understands us so well and has plans for every single one of your lives. One of the things I've learned as a parent is anytime in the Bible we see the Bible talking about how God interacts with his creation, it's something we can apply to parenting, because God is the ultimate parent. He has everything that children, we as his creation, need. As a mother, as a father, all the needs that a mother and a father bring to the table, he provides for us, and he wants to meet those needs in your life. And so when we see a verse like this that talks about how he interacts with his creation, we can, as parents, say, okay, there's something in that about how I should interact with my kids. And part of what we see here is we see a God that is in tune with his creation. We see a God that is constantly observing, constantly exploring, constantly understanding, and involved in his creation and their plans and their movement forward. And as parents, that's one of the things we're called to do, is to explore, to observe our children. Now, probably the best way to understand what this looks like, who played soccer or basketball on a team at some point in their life? I need someone that played. You don't have to come up here. I'm just going to ask some questions. Okay, over here, David. All right, David, you were a soccer player, right? Yeah, okay, figured that. You're a coach too, right? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so let's take dribbling, all right? When your athletes are dribbling down the field, or you're working on dribbling skills, what's one of the things that every coach tells their players about dribbling? Dribble with your head up. Exactly, right? You dribble with your head up. That was not pre-planned, right? It's just so fundamental in basketball and soccer, because we typically want to do the exact opposite, especially if you're just learning the skills, right? If you're dribbling or if you're bouncing the ball, like, you just focus on what you're doing. But the coaches are always telling you, dribble with your head up. Why do you dribble with your head up? Why is that important? There you go. So you can see the people you can pass to. So you can see the defenders. So you can see how the play's developing. So you can understand where you're at on the court or on the field, right? Dribbling with your head up. You know, as parents, what we do? We often dribble with our head down. Think about it. We get so that you're interacting with your kid, you're dealing with a situation, there's a season of life, right? We get so consumed. It's so easy, and I'm so bad at this. It's so easy to get so consumed with that one thing, with that problem, with that situation, with that challenge, right? That grade in that class. And we just get so consumed with it. We get so focused on it, and we lose perspective. We lose perspective, don't we? Or maybe it's not your kid. Maybe it's the thing you're dealing with. At work, relationally, in the world, something that's going on, and we just get so consumed with it that we forget to dribble with our head up. And as parents, we want to, whatever we're dealing with, we always want to be watching and observing and understanding our kids. Now, sometimes we have to be okay with not understanding. For example, I was talking to one dad last week, and we were talking about this, and he was saying how one of the things, he had adult kids now, but one of the things one of his kids when they were younger was very sensitive. And it was really hard because he got made fun of in school, and he was wrestling with like, Dad, why did God make me this way? And I don't like being like this. And as a dad, like at that age when they're young, you don't know the answers to those questions. Like you don't know why God might have made them that way. But now that he's an adult, you know what he is? He's a chiropractor. And you're like, oh, you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a nurse someday. You're going to be a chiropractor. You're going to be a physical therapist. I know why God gave you such a sensitive heart. Like, it makes sense. But early on, as a parent, sometimes we see things and we just don't know, right? We're coming down the field and the play hasn't fully evolved yet. People haven't cut and gotten open, and we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet, but we're still dribbling with our head up. We're watching, we're observing. One of the greatest things we do as a parent is we want to help our kids understand and discover the gifts and the talents that God's given them. Dan Webster, he's an author. He's written some books and some youth curriculum and for parents and for youth workers. He said this, he said, at the intersection of passion and capability, a kid will find life, freedom, and strength. This is true for us as adults as well, right? When you discover what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, when you discover what you're good at, where those intersect, you start to discover what God made you for. And you start to find the life, freedom, and strength that God has for you. This is one of the jobs of us as parents, is to explore, is to observe, is to watch and hope and understand who our kids are and who God's made them to be. Sir Ken Robinson is a famous, he's done several famous TED Talks. He's involved with leadership, and he's involved with just creativity in the classroom. He tells a story of how Jillian Lynn, who's a famous dancer and choreographer, discovered her gifts as a kid. And so I just want you to watch this. So show this video.
I'm fascinated by how people got to be there. It's really prompted by a conversation I had with a wonderful woman who most people have never heard of. She's called Gillian Lynn. Have you heard of her? Some have. She's a choreographer, and everybody knows her work. She did Cats and Phantom of the Opera. She's wonderful. I used to be on the board of the Royal Ballet in England, as you can see. And anyway, Jill and I had lunch one day. I said, how'd you get to be a dancer? And she said it was interesting. When she was at school, she was really hopeless. And the school in the 30s wrote to her parents and said, we think Gillian has a learning disorder. She couldn't concentrate. She was fidgeting. I think now they'd say she had ADHD. Wouldn't you? But this was the 1930s, and ADHD hadn't been invented, at this point. So it wasn't an available condition. People weren't aware they could have that. Anyway, she went to see this specialist. So this oak-panelled room, and she was there with her mother, and she was led and sat on this chair at the end, and she sat on her hands for 20 minutes while this man talked to her mother about all the problems Gillian was having at school. And at the end of it, because she was disturbing people, her homework was always late and so on, little kid of 8, in the end, the doctor went and sat next to Gillian and said, Gillian, I've listened to all these things that your mother's told me. I need to speak to her privately. So he said, wait here, we'll be back. We won't be very long. And they went and left her. But as they went out the room, he turned on the radio that was sitting on his desk. And when they got out the room, he said to her mother, just stand and watch her. And the minute they left the room, she said she was on her feet, moving to the music. And they watched for a few minutes, and he turned to her mother, and he said, Mrs. Lynn, Gillian isn't sick. She's a dancer. Take her to a dance school. I said, what happened? He said, she did. I can't tell you how wonderful it was. We walked in this room, and it was full of people like me. People who couldn't sit still. People who had to move to think. They did ballet, they did tap, they did jazz, they did modern, they did contemporary. She was eventually auditioned for the Royal Ballet School. She became a soloist. She had a wonderful career at the Royal Ballet. She eventually graduated from the Royal Ballet School, found her own company, the Gillian Dance Company, met Andrew Lloyd Webber. She's been responsible for some of the most successful musical theatre productions in history. She's given pleasure to millions, and she's a multimillionaire. Somebody else might have put her on medication and told her to calm down.
At the intersection of passion and capability, a kid will find life, freedom, and strength. For each of these areas, I want to give you some very practical tools because I don't think in 20 minutes, it's going to move the needle a whole lot. My goal in 20 minutes is to inspire you and to give you some tools and activities that you can take and actually take steps towards being more fully engaged. I put together there's a handout that goes along with this. The QR code you're going to see in the middle there, every time you see that, it's the same one. So if you scan it once and download the PDF, you can. If you don't do that type of stuff, there are a few printed copies out at the welcome table. You can grab that. 3 ways you can practice exploration and what that looks like. Number 1 is this activity called What Do You See? What do you see? It's a series of questions that you or you and your spouse get together and just answer them for each of your kids. There's only like 5 or 6 of them, right? It's all about observing and what have you seen and what do you notice about your children. And then there's some reflection questions. Okay, now that you've answered those, what does it look like as a parent? How should we respond to that? Are there things we should do? Are there things we should help them explore? Are there things maybe we should stop doing? One-on-one interview. This is my absolute favorite out of everything you're going to see today, activity-wise. One-on-one interview. This is all about taking 20 minutes with your kid. Go get ice cream, go buy lunch, go to a park, and sit there. And just for 20 minutes, there's some questions you can go through. And these aren't hard questions, but they give you tremendous insight into your kids. One of my favorite questions on there is a question of, what do you hate? One person I was talking to said they asked their son this question, what do you hate? And what their son said, their son was very involved in athletics, and they were there as parents and very supportive and posting and very interested and very, very on board and felt like they were doing a great job and things were going well. But you know what he said he hated? He said, I hate it when you and mom post pictures on social media of me. And he had never said anything before. And as they were talking more, it's not so much that there's pictures on social media of him. He didn't really have a problem with that. It's just that he didn't know they were there and he didn't see them before they got there. But there was this thing that was creating friction, that was creating tension in the relationship. They had no idea anything was wrong. They had no idea that was creating some conflict or some difficulty in the relationship until they just asked that simple question of, what do you hate? And so this one-on-one interview, there's just some questions like that of having a conversation so you can better understand your kid, your teen, your preteen, and kind of where they're at right now and what they're dealing with. So exploration is one way we can become more fully engaged parents. The second one, affirmation. Affirmation. Now this one's pretty straightforward, and I think we get this. Affirmation, Proverbs 12:25 says, anxiety in a person's heart weighs it down, but a good word makes it glad. Anxiety is in a person's heart. One of the ways you can think about parenting is you are a steward, you are a shepherd of your child's heart. That's one of the responsibilities, that's one of the opportunities you have to shepherd it and cultivate it and care for the heart of your child. And we all know, because we've been hurt by others relationally, either when we were young or as an adult, that it is easy to harm and to weigh down someone's heart. And so parents, this is a responsibility we've got to steward well. Because it's easy with our language to cause harm and to weigh down our children. Some of you as adults, I've talked with some of you, and some of the biggest struggles in your life and biggest hang-ups that you still have even as an adult come from words that were spoken to you as a child. Maybe from your parents, maybe from someone else. Someone was critical of you. Someone said you don't have what it takes. Someone shamed you. Someone put you down, and you still as an adult carry that. And so parents, this idea of affirmation is something we want to be really good at. With exploration, we say we want to dribble with our head up. With affirmation, how do we do that? We want to focus on the miracle instead of the mess. How easy is it as a parent to just get overly consumed with the mess? How easy is it in a marriage to get overly consumed and critical of your spouse's mess? It's true for any relationship. We want to be people that are really good at, we deal with the mess. We don't ignore the mess. That's not what I'm saying, but that doesn't get all of our time and all of our attention. There is a miracle in every one of your children. There are incredible things they are good at and strengths that they have and talents that they have and possibilities for their future. And even if they struggle in school or even if they struggle socially or even if they struggle in some area of life, there are things, there's tremendous good God has put in them. And as a parent, our goal is to call that out. This is just a fundamental human need, isn't it? It's interesting at work that one of the top things in every employee engagement survey and every employee survey that comes up, one of the top employee needs, usually it's in the top 3 or 4, is I wish my boss would recognize me more. I wish my boss would show me more appreciation. Because most of our leaders and most of us that are leaders and managers, we're not very good at that, right? It's just easy. You forget about it. But most people in the workplace, they want to know that their hard work is being recognized. They want to know that someone sees potential in them, that even if they made a mistake, even if maybe they didn't perform as much as they should, that there is good that you see in them. We all want that more in the workplace and in our jobs. And your children are no different. Let's be people that are really good at focusing on the miracle instead of just focusing on the mess. What are some ways we can do that? See it, say it, write it. See it, say it, write it. This is all about just opportunities to send notes and messages to your young ones. When my kids were in elementary school, we would pack their lunch every day, and one of the things I would do is on their napkins, I would always take a permanent marker and write something on the napkin. Sometimes it was just, I love you. Sometimes I draw a picture. Sometimes it was a verse. Sometimes it was something positive. I really don't know if they ever even read those. Right? It's not like they came home and every day they're like, Dad, thanks so much for that message. That really helped me get through the day. I don't think I ever heard that. I don't know. Maybe it did. Right? See it, say it, right. What would it look like to get a dry erase marker and write messages on their mirror? So each morning when they woke up, they found it. What would it look like to stop by your child's school and to drop off a note at the front office? Now, don't all do this, and don't do it all at once because it create chaos. But what would it look like to drop off a note at the front office and say, hey, can you give this to my son? Or, make sure my son gets this. They call him down to the office. He goes down to the office, and he's like, what? And they're like, there's an important message from your mom or from your dad. And it was just a message that said, I love you. I'm so proud of you. All right? What kind of impact would that make? This week, randomly, I was at work and in the morning, and I thought of one of my kids, and so I just sent a message to them, and I was like, hey, I was just thinking about you. I just want you to know I'm proud of you and I love you. And they responded back. They're like, why'd you send this? Right? My first thought is, aren't you supposed to be in school? Why are you texting? But my second thought is, that's fine. I was like, well, hey, I just thought of you, and so I think that was God putting you on my mind, and so I just want you to know, I wanted you to know that, and I'm just praying for you. And they were like, okay. All right? They're okay. That's how kids respond to you. And that's totally fine. What I found out later is that child was having a rough day. Now, it's not like they came home and they're like, oh man, that message just totally changed the course of my day. No, that didn't happen. But they were having a rough day. I had no idea about it. God put them on my mind, and so I wrote something down. I sent it to them. I don't know. I just want to be more engaged in the lives of my children. See it, say it, write it. Seek positive gossip. Seek positive gossips. Gossips can sometimes be good. Usually we talk about gossip being bad. One of the things I'm grateful for is there are some men here at the church that have been that my son really looks up to. I think about Steve, and I think about Clint, and I think about Josh, and I think about Tony Wrench and Mike St. Clair. And there's just some men here that have been really influential in his life. And several months ago, actually, probably 6 months ago, 12 months ago, Tony came up to me and said something that my son had done. And he was just like, I just wanted you to know this. And so I went and told him, and he was really excited that was mentioned. And what Tony didn't know is that was something we had been talking about and working on, and someone else noticed it. Because sometimes the words of others are even more powerful in your kids' lives than your own. And so when you talk to a teacher, when you talk to a coach, and you hear something and that's positive, pass that along, because that can be incredibly powerful in the lives of your children. Seek positive gossip. What's right about you? This is my second favorite activity out of everything here. There's a bank of words, and it's all about finding 5 or 7 things that are strengths that you see in your teen or your kids, right? And then I talk about, don't just write it down, don't just say it, but go get something. Like go to Hobby Lobby and get one of those wooden shields or one of those wooden crosses or a picture frame or something. Get something right on there. You can decorate it if you want to be creative. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. Present it to them. Tell them why you picked those words. It can now become something that sits in their room. It now becomes something that they can look at, and you don't know the impact it has. Maybe they had a rough day. Maybe it's something they see when they get up. Maybe, I don't know, right? But just being engaged, telling them about the good that you see in them, affirming them is what's right about it activities all about. This is all about just what can we do, what steps can we take to be more fully engaged. How are we more fully engaged? We talked about exploration, dribbling with your head up. We talked about affirmation, focusing on the miracle instead of the mess. And the final one is revelation. No one thinks about your kids more than God does. No one loves your kids more than God does. No one wants your kids to succeed and move forward and achieve all that they've been created for more than God does. And you know the way that he helps them recognize those things and reveal those things? Through you, Dad, and through you, Mom. You are the tool, you are the conduit that he is going to reveal himself to your children, that he is going to direct them and guide them. Proverbs 22:6 says this, and a lot of times we think about this with parenting younger children, but it says, train up a child in the way he should go, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. You know how that training happens? It's through us as parents. God wants to instruct you and guide, he wants to instruct your children and guide your children, and he wants to use you to do it. Parents, let's stop allowing others to have the hard conversations with our kids. Let's not be afraid. Now, there's kind of the old traditional, let's have the, when we were young, the birds and the bees, let's have the sex conversation, right? Like it's just one conversation that addresses it. It doesn't. But in today's world, there's a lot of other conversations that are oftentimes even more difficult to have with our young people. Are you having those? Are you allowing others to have those in your place? We need to talk to them about drugs and alcohol and vaping. We need to talk to them about sex and pornography. You know what the average age of porn exposure is? 9.5. 9.5. That's the average age. That means half of your kids are going to be exposed. And it's not like they're out seeking it necessarily, but they just accidental on TV, on a friend. And this isn't just like, sometimes parents are like, well, if my kids are homeschooled, they're protected from that. Absolutely not, right? 9.5. So that means if you have a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, and you've not yet talked to them about pornography, you're probably behind. And it's a conversation you need to start. You need to start having. Abortion. Are you having a conversation about abortion? It's in the news everywhere. Are we talking about it with our kids? Sexual identity. Transgender. Gender dysphoria. There's lots of confusion out there, and lots of people are trying to figure things out, especially young people. Do you have a voice in that conversation with your kids? Right? God wants to use you to address these topics. It doesn't mean you have to know everything. It doesn't mean you have to have all the answers. They're going to ask some hard things. There's going to be things you say, I don't know. There's going to be things that are hard for you to relate with. Spiritual conversations. Sometimes I think we're afraid to have them because they might ask some really hard questions, or we're insecure ourselves. Are you having that conversation? Or are you allowing others to have it in your place? God wants to use you to reveal himself, to instruct, to guide your kids. The way they will know about him, especially when they're younger, is going to be through you. Well, the NFL got a little heavy there, so let's bring it up a little bit, right? NFL season started last Thursday. Who's excited for football to be back on? Yeah? All right. Hopefully the Colts do okay this year. How many of you know who Mike Singletary is? Anyone remember Mike Singletary? All right. Everyone above 40 is like, yeah, I remember him. All the young people are like, Mike who? Right? Mike Singletary played linebacker for Chicago Bears, Hall of Famer, won a Super Bowl, one of the best linebackers of all time. I think probably one of the best pictures of what revelation looks like in action comes from a portion of his Hall of Fame acceptance speech. And so I just wanted you to watch this. This is what it looks like as a parent to do revelation, to be engaged in your kid's life. Watch this.
This story begins a long way back. Houston, Texas. Sort of began when I was 12 years old because there were a lot of things happening at that particular time in my family. We're going through a lot. We're trying to go to the next level. And I'm the last of 10 kids, and when you have 10 kids, sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle to make it work. That year, when I was 12 years old, Mom and Dad went through a divorce. When I was 5 years old, my brother Dale passed away, and my second brother would pass away when I was age 12. That was a tough year. I had no confidence, had no self-esteem. Just a young ghetto boy in Houston, Texas, trying to figure out who he was and where he was going to go from there. And I want to tell you today, my mom sat me down one day when I was moping around and feeling sorry for myself, close to giving up. Began to listening to everybody else in the neighborhood that says no one gets out of here. No one has ever made it out of here, and you won't either. Besides, you don't have the ability, you don't have the skill, you don't have anything. My mom sat me down that day and she let me know something that I always knew, but man, I needed to hear it. Mom sat me down, she said, son, I want you to know something. She said, I want you to know that there is greatness in you. There's something special about you. I prayed for you before you were born, and every day since, it's in there, and you've got to find it for yourself. I'm going to do everything I can as a mother to get it there, but you've got to find it. She put her hands on my forearm, and she asked me if I could become the man around the house. I said, Mom, I can do that. That day, I went to my room, and I wrote down my goals. And at 12 years old, it went something like this: find a way to get a scholarship to go to college, become an All-American in college, get my degree, go to the NFL, and buy my mom a house, and take care of her for the rest of my life. When I think back on that time, I think how important it is that we need to let people know, let our kids know, let our spouses know how important they are to us. Don't keep it a secret, because that day my life began. As I think about all of the people that made a difference in my life, my mom is the start of that. My mom is the start of that because she is the one that introduced me to the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. She is the one that said, Mike, with men all things are possible, but with him, with men things are impossible, but with God all things are possible. She said, son, I want you to understand that whatever you do, wherever you go, if you just take God with you, I know you're going to be okay.
One way you can practice revelation, there's an exercise I walked you through, just praying for your kids, asking God for a word, a picture, practicing gratitude for them, and then possibly sharing what God gives to you. Parents, don't underestimate the impact that you have on the lives of your children. Even as they get older, even as they push back, even as they resist, they still need you. Maybe not as much, maybe not in some of the more tactical areas like getting dressed or driving them around even, because now they have friends that can do that. But they still need you. And you still have an incredibly powerful voice in their life. Let's practice being fully engaged parents. Parents that are good at and practicing exploration, affirmation, revelation. What does it look like to do that in greater ways with your young people? A couple months ago, I was at work talking to a coworker. One of the family rhythms we have during the school year is we do a family meeting on Sunday nights. I don't think anyone likes it in the household, right? Like, for me, being honest, there's always kind of say, like, I'd just rather sit there and watch TV or, right, just lay down. And my kids absolutely tell me and voice their displeasure with it. And we started it last year, but we had some incredibly fruitful times of conversation and prayer, and it's just a focused time of kind of pushing other distractions aside. And we've not even done it the last 2 weeks, but we're going to do it tonight, right? So my kids are here, like, we've been traveling and out of town. But so I was talking to my coworker about that, and just like the resistance. He has older kids. His kids are grown and adults now. And he looked at me and he said, Scott, fight for your children. Fight for your children. And, I think for me at that time, that was a word that I needed to hear, that God was using him, and I don't think he realized that. But as we wrap up this series on Family Matters, for those of you that are parents, I just want to leave you with the final words you hear being fight for your children. For those of you that are married, and we spend a lot of time talking about relationships and marriage over the last several weeks on Sundays and at our retreat, fight for your spouse. Fight for your marriage. Don't give up. It's all hard, right? It's hard. Relationships are hard. They're difficult, but they're worth it. And God has created you for such a time as this. God has given you the gifts and the things that your kids need. You don't even know you have what they need. They don't know it. And God has prepared you for this season, and you have what it takes. And in your marriages, no marriage is easy. No relationship just happens automatically. Even when you look at people that seem to have it all together, right? There's a story behind them. There's history, and there's trouble, and there's struggle. And for those that seem to be doing well, they probably had to fight to get to where they're at today. And if you're here and your marriage is maybe it seems like it's going to end, or it's so strained and broken right now, or the relationship with your kids is so strained and so broken right now, I want you to know that God is telling you to fight for it. We have a God of reconciliation. We have a God of restoration that is in the business of restoring families and returning children to parents and returning spouses and turning their hearts towards one another. He can take a heart that's hard and make it soft. He can take a mind that's closed off and open it up. And so wherever you're at today, I just want to encourage you to keep fighting, to not give up. Father, we thank you so much that you are a God of relationship. And God, when we look at marriage and when we talk about parenting and family, God, it's all modeled after your relationship with us. That you are a relational God. And I thank you, God, that every single one of us here, you want us to go deeper in relationship with you. And maybe we're in a place this morning where we don't have relationship with you, where we don't know you. And you want us to start. Maybe we're in a place today where we've walked with you for a while and it's time to commit. And as we saw others taking the step of baptism, that's what you're calling us to. Father, I want to pray for marriages this morning, God. I want to pray for the relationships that are strained, God. I pray for breakthrough and blessing in those households, Father. I pray, God, that through the Holy Spirit there would be miraculous restoration and reconciliation between adults and spouses where there's been brokenness and pain and struggle. Father, I want to pray for those that are parents this morning that maybe, like me, feel inadequate, or that feel it's a struggle right now, or feel hopeless, or they're not sure they're going to make it. God, provide hope this morning. Father, I pray you would infuse this place with hope by the power of your Holy Spirit. God, I pray every single person here knows that they do have what it takes. And God, I know we have a church full of good parents, God, but God, I know you're calling us to more. You're calling us to be great parents. You're calling us to be more fully engaged in the lives of our young ones. It doesn't matter if they're 3 years old or 13 years old. Help us to grow. Help us to move forward. In Jesus' name.